Welcome to Rewind, everybody. I am your host, Brian Petty, and this show is dedicated to bringing you all of the action from around drag racing, funny moments, record-setting passes, insanely competitive events, and everything in between in drag racing from past events. Because we're talking about drag racing and some of the biggest events, we figured episode 1 should probably focus on something really cool, a really big event, and that's why we're talking about Sweet 16 2.0 today. Now, since we're talking about this event, I gotta cover a couple different things. Number one, Sweet 16 2.0, if you don't know about it or you're not that familiar with it, there's some really cool specific things about this event. Number one, it is focused on drag radial racers, okay? Donald Duck Long puts on 3 events every single year. He puts on Lights Out, Sweet 16, and No Mercy. All of them have a very hard bias toward drag radial racers, but only Sweet 16 has 2 classes, X275 and Radial Versus the World. The other 2 have bracket racing classes, index classes, but guess what? Sweet 16, X275, $50,000 payout. Radial Versus the World, $100,000 payout. That's it. And it brings in all of the most competitive racers and the fastest cars from around the world. So let's check out exactly what happened in Sweet 16 2.0. This race, a lot of records are set and a lot of fast cars make their personal bests ever because of a couple different things. The track prep is on point for drag radials and the density altitude is insanely good, so the engines are making more power than ever. So let's start off right at the top, Radial Versus the World, with the top 2 qualifiers. Now, Rivenbark has always been a competitive racer. He's got a first-gen Camaro with a Pro-Charged power plant under the hood, and let's take a look at his number 1 qualifying pass from Sweet 16 2.0 and see exactly how the car went from A to B.
So Bryce again, we see the nitrous car on the right-hand side go to 60s, but all eyes on Kevin Rivenbark. Can we see 50s for the first time in RVW history?
Bottom line, we already had the quickest field in history. The bump spot last year was 376 and change. We're down to 375.3. We've reset the nitrous world record. We've reset the world record in X275 multiple times already tonight. And now we're going to find out if this Pro-Charged Camaro can be the first car to the 350 zone of Radial Versus the World.
Here we go. Oh, man, moving left, bringing it back right. Top end, chugging it through.
Yeah!
58 and 206. There it is. History, baby.
Now, there were a lot of things that happened on that pass, okay? So I'm going to break them down as easily as I can. Number 1, Rivenbark just set the record for Radial Versus the World with a 3.58 elapsed time. And he is the first blower car to break into the 350s as well. And he number 1 qualified for Sweet 16 with that pass. So a lot of things happened right then and there. And I believe he went 0.91 in 60 foot, which is hauling the mail. But even with that record, even with how fast that pass was, Daniel Ferris was right on his heels in this next pass.
Dan Ferris told me this morning that after this race, he's going to take the Mustang and put it back on the big tires. Run it as a Pro Mod of the NMCA and Midwest Pro Mod Series for the rest of the year, but he's having fun over here. This car has worked, I think, even beyond his own expectations with the radial tires on it.
Can we see Ferris going to 50s? Can Super Dave finally make the hit he was looking for? We know the track is there. We know this is the best air they've seen all weekend. Pre-stage is on. Both cars going to build some boost. Put it in the beams right here. Oh, baby. Top end circulating at 357, wow. 214 miles an hour, 970, 60 foot. Holy crap.
And just like that, Daniel Ferris took the number 1 qualifying spot from Rivenbark, as well as the Radial Versus the world record. Insanely quick and very competitive. Both cars were within 100th of each other. It might even have been less than 100th. It might be a few thousandths, but no matter what, both cars are insanely impressive, and the record keeps swapping spots between these 2 cars. Now, Ferris has always had very competitive cars. He's had a number of them throughout the years, and this one was no exception to the rule. And now that we've talked about the top 2 qualifiers for Radial Versus the World for Sweet 16 2.0, I wanted to spend some time and talk about a couple other passes that might not be number 1 and number 2 qualifiers, but they were insanely impressive for the event. Now, if any of you know Marty Stinnett, he has a small block powered orange Ford Mustang with twin turbos. This car is always impressive, it's insanely fast, and it keeps setting the record for the fastest Radial Versus the World small block powered car, and this pass is no exception.
Rivenbark seems to have a whole lot more resources in his corner than Stennis. Stennis' car is beautiful, doesn't want for anything, has the best parts he could put on it, but he's dealing with a Colossus on the other side of the racetrack with that Pro Charger car.
And Pro Line, Pro Charger, both helping out. Steve Petty doing the tuning, Kevin Rivenbark doing the driving. The Law Motorsports on board. That's a tough combination to beat.
You got about 14 people over there looking at Stennett's car and 376 standing behind Rivenbark's car on the right side of the racetrack.
All right, here we go. Look at Rivenbark going away, baby. Top end charging to lead now 362 and 205. And Stennett resets the record, 365 and 205.
Gonna leave with his head held high. Amazing. 9:79.60 foot time.
So right there, you just saw Marty Stennett reset the small block RVW record with a 365 elapsed time and a mile per hour of 205.98, almost 206, and it's a small block. It's a cast small block. If you've ever talked to Marty Stennett, I've gone over his pits, talked to him multiple times. Super nice guy. You look at his engine, he pops the valve covers, and it's like, is that it? That looks like a normal small block going on, and it is insanely impressive. Super cool guy, so congrats to them for resetting the record. But that's not the only other RVW car that didn't necessarily number 1, number 2 qualify, but Brad Edwards and his Mustang did something really incredible at this race, and I want to check it out right now.
Race guy driver, right? Kevin Mullins did a lot of RVW stuff back in the day. It's good to have him here on the property. The air is there, Brian. Can we see it? 3 seconds on leaf springs. And can we see Edwards dip in the 60s?
If it's going to happen tonight, if it's going to happen for Terry Parks, it's going to happen tonight. You don't get these conditions, but maybe once, twice a year. He's taken full advantage so far, resetting the record, then lowering it down to within a few hundredths of that 3-second barrier. And Brad Edwards, we're looking for two guys to smash into some different barriers here. Looking for Edwards to smash into the 60s. And Parks to try to put a crooked number, I guess, as we'd say, to start his elapsed time at the finish line. 4:04.3, right now the best number in the history of drag racing on leaf springs in the 8th mile. Terry Parks trying to start it with a 3. And Brad Edwards, boy, would he love to see a 69 or even a 70 flat. And Edwards rocketing down the racetrack. 369 for Edwards. Wow. 69.1, 202 miles an hour, and Brad Edwards is in the field with some confidence right now.
So not only is Brad Edwards in that extremely tight 16 qualifying car field, he reset the record for stock suspension. Yeah, that's right. That car is on stock suspension. Went 0.96 in 60 foot and went 369 in the 8th mile. Insanely impressive, and he's in the field, so I wanted to give those guys props. I've seen that car over the years progress, you know, getting the longer nose and changing some stuff up. It's still a big block Chevy based power plant, still twin turbos, but the fact that it's stock suspension absolutely blows my mind. I can't even fathom how much work and how much time those guys have into that car, so well done to them. Now that we've talked about all of the highlights and the number 2 and number 1 qualifier for Radial Versus the World, I want to dive right in to X275. Now, there's a couple different stories here that I want to talk about before we get too deep. Number 1, there were some really big upsets. There were a couple underdogs in this race, and I want to make sure you're prepared for that because we're going to dive in deep as we go through these passes. Now, the number 1 qualifying spot, we got to talk about that very first because, of course, it's number 1 qualifying spot, and it puts you in the best possible position for eliminations. So let's check out what Rob Goss has going on with his black late model Challenger with the late model Hemi Pro Charged power plant under the hood.
It's really important if you want to run more. I'm sure some of you do, and you want to run for 15 grand or 10 grand. That's real money. Make sure you don't pack up and leave tonight. Rob Goss and Kaylee Mills headed to the starting line. Bruce, a.k.a. Fat Elvis, has brought Rob Goss into the beams, and now Kaylee Mills being brought in by her team. Mills has one last shot to qualify for the main event, or she will be running in the second chance race. Rob Goss has already qualified at number 3. He is comfy. 4:27.3, one of the quickest runs in the history of the category. Kaylee Mills trying to go quicker than 35.3. A good side-by-side drag race. 35.6 for Mills. But Rob Goss goes 4.23. Yes.
Wow, 169 miles an hour. That's a new world record, baby.
Rob Goss just set the record with an elapsed time of 4.237. The car is a rocket ship, okay? It's doing good in 60 foot, it's doing good in the middle, and it's doing good in the back half. Now, no other car is going to come on top of that, but there was another team that was right on his heels, and that's the pass we're going to watch right now for the number 2 qualifying spot in X275.
Rich Bruder to Soma Power. Pro Charge entry going to be the left-hand side. Let's see if Bruder can go number 1.
I'm gonna say they're gonna make a healthy run here at Manny's number. That 427 could be in jeopardy, as these guys have made some pretty big leaps over the course of the day. 38 to 32. Not too big a stretch to think this thing could go from 32 to 27 or even quicker than that.
Let it all hang out. Why not?
Why not?
Walls is right there too, man. This car makes enough power to do it.
Yeah, Wall's running those high 30s and low 40s. I mean, I think I foresee him going into the lower half of the 30s, but watch for Bruder to punch one into the 20s here. Time's right, conditions are right, and the racetrack's right.
Going for flying us out. Look at Bruder. Top end charge going down to a 426 with an 8 at 163.
Whoa.
Bruder Brothers go 26. I told you, baby.
Wow.
Now, understanding X275 and seeing what Bruders just did is really impressive, because a 426 is very, very quick, okay? It is not a slouch, but you got to understand the background on Bruder Brothers, right? They went from a Pro Charged car years ago, same exact car with a Pro Charger. Then they went to the turbo side of things, were really, really competitive with the turbocharger, and this is their very first race back with a Pro Charger on the car, and they're coming out swinging at all of their competition, and number 2 qualified with an extremely low mile per hour. So we're going to have to see how they progress through the event and see exactly where they land when it comes to eliminations, because right now they are number 2 qualified, and they are going to go into eliminations, semifinals, and finals with some stiff competition. Let's talk about some other things going on with X275 now that we know who number 1 and number 2 qualified. One big thing I really want to emphasize is the fact that this field was so incredibly tight. Number 1, like we've talked about, Sweet 16 only has a 16 car qualifying field. That's half of normal races. Normal races have 32 car qualifying fields, so you're instantly getting rid of a bunch of cars that just can't make the cut. So you're down to 16 instantly. And the spread between the number 1 qualifier and the number 16 qualifier in X275 was less than a 1/10 and a half elapsed time. That's how tight and how impressive all of these cars and all of these racers are, okay? Number 1 qualified was 4.23, and I believe number 16 qualified car was like 4.35. Really, really tight, super competitive, and that's something I wanted to cover because you might not have seen that. If you saw the race, you might not understand how tight that qualifying field was. And Radial Versus the World was no different, but I really wanted to emphasize that. A couple other cars I want to talk about in the X275 class. They might not be number 1, number 2 qualifiers, but they were really impressive, and they honestly made the show. The first one is Gary White in the Titan Motorsports Supra. This car years ago used to be an Outlaw 10.5 Pro modified style car, and it was really quick, but they retired it in 2012. They didn't bring it out for years and years, and then just recently, before this race, they brought it back out in X275 trim. Now, if you don't understand the differences between Outlaw 10.5 and Pro modified and X275, that is a huge difference between all those classes. Weights, tire size, suspension setup, shock settings, tires, turbocharger size, cubic inches, you name it, everything is different. And the fact that they brought that car out and they made this next run makes it all that more impressive.
Sean Ayers coming up in that Fletcher Cox-owned Gold Dust Mustang. And Gary White on the bump spot with his clutch pedal equipped 2JZ powered Toyota Supra.
Here we go, Gary White on the bump spot. Can he represent the import market? Can he represent the clutch assisted market? Can he represent 2JZ market?
From what we have seen happen throughout this afternoon and tonight, White's going to pick up a couple of numbers here. Yeah, he's set 3 records already. Why not just blast those 3 into the oblivion? And,
Sorry, what was that?
yeah, records for days. And Sean Ayers, number 13 qualifier, trying to find his way, I'm thinking, into the 20s here, at least into the deeper end of the 30s. He's at 33.6.
I got White going 29.
A little wiggle for White as they go to the stripe. 431, 160 for Ayers. 430 with a 7.
174. Look at the mile an hour. Gary White.
Now, while the ET on Titan Motorsport Supra was quick, the mile per hour was something that was even more impressive because 174.55 was the mile per hour record for X275 at the time. And remember what I said, this car was in retirement from 2012 to 2019. I think this was the second event they ever took this car to in X275 trim. So they overcame huge odds and they qualified really well in X275 and they set the mile per hour record, and that's why I want to talk about them on the show and show you guys just how fast an inline 6 with a single turbocharger can be, even in X275. But that's not the only car I want to talk about. Something else that happened that was really big was Milliken's green car with a diesel under the hood. So let's take a look, and afterward we can see the pass and talk about exactly what happened with the car and what's going on under the hood, because it's something that gets me really excited and I love the car. So let's take a look.
The diesel Chevy 2 going to be given a left-hand side. Ryan Milliken, of course, Phil Hines, loudest car competition. All eyes are on the diesel, right? Time to be covered in sun. Right here at Sweet 16. Can he go another 30? It's underneath the lights. Why not? John Mullen over there, Mincer Motorsports. Let's see if they can lay it down.
Once again, we need Radial Versus the World to the staging lanes, please. RVW.
Oh, baby, Hines is going high. And look at
Whoa!
28 and
What?
70 miles an hour.
What? 428.9 at 170.88 miles an hour. Ryan Milliken rewriting the history books again.
As you can see, that diesel-powered car is not a slouch, okay? They just went 428, which is the fastest diesel X275 pass ever. Okay, I know a lot of times you look at diesel trucks and diesel powered cars and they talk like they're fast, but they're huge and heavy. This car completely breaks all those stereotypes because they just qualified in the top half of one of the most competitive, if not the most competitive X275 race in the world. So a big shout out to those guys. Well done. And let's keep moving on to X275 semifinals and the final race. Something really interesting happened in the semifinals. Actually, a couple different things. Number one, the first pass between Craig Walls and Rob Goss. Okay, Rob Goss, he already qualified number one. He set the record in the class. He is a force to be reckoned with. Craig Walls, most people don't know, they fought that car all weekend. Breaking this, breaking that, fixing it, trying to make rounds, breaking, not being able to figure stuff out. They came up and somehow qualified with a Hail Mary, and I think they landed in the 13th qualifying spot. So the bottom of the ladder going up against King Goss, I guess you could call him. And the fact that they were able to go up against him was really cool. But as you'll see from this next pass, something was missing.
Straight down Broadway here. Remember, this is the most altitude we've seen all weekend long. We're almost 1,300 feet. Now, the barometer's still about 30.2, which is not bad. Water grain's the same it's been pretty much all weekend. Here we go.
I'm just going to stop the video right here, and we can, because this is insane. There's no other car. Rob Goss just didn't show up. He's not there. So the fact that these guys fought their car all weekend, they barely made the qualifying field, and guess what? Goss's car broke and he couldn't make the semifinal run. Now that doesn't mean that this is just a freebie run for these guys. They still need to put it on kill and go as fast as possible, because that's going to give them lane choice and it's going to set them up best going into the final. But I just wanted to clarify, this puts these guys as the underdogs, basically a bye into the final. So let's see how fast they run.
So let's see if he goes A to B. Did they set the car up right here for the track conditions? Oh, baby. 106.60 foot, about 435 under 62 right there in the heat of the day. And let me say that again. 106.60 foot, 435 at 162.
So Walls makes a pass of 435 in the 8th at 162 miles per hour. It's not a slouch, but it's definitely not the fastest in the field. He kind of got a golden ticket handed to him when Goss broke. Okay, that was the #1 qualifier, and he broke and he didn't have to face off with him, so he's in great shape. It is definitely a great underdog story, but now we got to see exactly what Bruders and Fisher come in with in the next round of semifinals to see who goes into the final round with Walls. So let's take a look.
KBX, Bennett Power on the left-hand side of the racetrack. John Colibas over there. The guys working hard. Actually, they came in a little late as they were refining the engine into the chassis this weekend. Bruder here on the right-hand side made the switch to Pro Charger. Let's see if they can lay it down.
Gonna fly over by a helicopter here. That's interesting.
Nick Bruder, birthday today. They'd love to go to the final round here for 50 grand. Both drivers away. Oh, man, bring it on. It's going to be Bruder.
Yeah, smoke for Fisher. Bruder goes 431 at 163.95 miles an hour.
And as you can see, Bruders came out with the win in the last semifinal run, which puts Bruder in against Walls for the final. Huge underdog story in the making right here, and that's what we're going to check out next. The final in X275 at Sweet 16 2.0.
I love the fact that these are two racers from that northeastern quadrant of the country, Delaware and New Jersey, a place where X275 really flourished. And we have seen racers from Western Canada, from Colorado, from Texas, from all over the United States come here to Georgia to compete with the best. But when we talk about X275, we really got to talk about where its roots lie, and it's in this area of the country.
When you talk about X275, you talk about the Bruder brothers,
Yep.
right? In the history of X275 racing, the #1 name that's always been mentioned, no matter what, is the Bruder brothers.
For good reasons
Yes.
and for other reasons. They're controversial. They're switching combinations a lot. They're pushing the rules. But the one thing they've always been is fast and legal.
So Rich Bruder coming on the left-hand side. That's in New Jersey. Nick Bruder celebrating a birthday. Can he get the birthday wish right here? Papa Bruder watching on, man. He's one proud papa. The Soma watching on from home. Battle of the Fox Buddies getting ready to put it in the beams. Who's going to win $50,000 right here at Duck X Productions?
It's Nick Bruder's birthday. Can Rich deliver him a present of a lifetime? 0-11 reaction time for Craig Walls. They get to the stripe. It's Bruder. 423 with a 5. Wow, 165.78 miles an hour in Craig Walls. 435.8 at 162. Walls was 0-11 on the Christmas tree, but Bruder just simply outpowered him. 423.5, 165. Amazing, amazing final round run. That is the quickest run in the history of the class.
Save it best for last, baby. $50,000. Bruder Brothers taking it home. Sets the world record in the final round. Doesn't get better than that.
That was a really cool run to watch, the final in X275. Bruders came out with the win on top, but there were more things going on than just the win. He reset the record at X275, 4.235, beating out Goss's run earlier in the week. But something else really cool that you might not have seen, Walls actually treed Bruder. He didn't have the power in the top end to beat him, but it was a race to watch. Walls was ahead of him for a little bit, but Bruders came out with the win, so congratulations to them. They got the $50,000 purse, they got the record, and in a brand new Pro Charge setup, so well done those guys. But now that X275 is done, we got to go back to the main event, Radial Versus the World, semifinals, and the final. But there are a couple different stories here going on. So Mike Stavrinos, hopefully I'm saying your name correctly, That is another underdog story in the making because they fought that car the entire race. And the fact that they even qualified in the top 16 was insanely impressive. But now that they're in the semifinal going up against Rivenbark is something that could be really cool to watch. So let's see exactly how that race went down.
Kevin Rivenbark has looked almost unstoppable this weekend. At one point, of course, he was the first car to run in the 50s, had the record for a little while until Dan Ferris took it away from him. The car has been consistent. Only smoked the tires a couple times, but they did a lot of engine work before they came up for this round.
Here we go, the drive play. Oh man, shakes the tires, he goes in the tires, making to be Kevin Rivenbark, 366, 203 miles an hour, 0-10 reaction time.
That was a killer run by Rivenbark. He came out with the win on that one. Stavrinos might have had the combo to make the win, but unfortunately he got crooked in the front half, and that means Rivenbark has a spot in the finals. So now let's take a look at the second run of the semifinals. Now this is another underdog story that was kind of happening during the race that you might not know about, okay? Bryson is similar to Walls from X275. They have a good story, you know what I mean? They have a lot going on. They're not the fastest cars out there, but the fact that they made it into the semifinals in such a tight-knit group and such a competitive race is really impressive in itself. But he's going up against Ferris, who is a very impressive racer and comes out on top a lot. So let's see exactly what happened in that race and who is going to make it in to the final.
All right, so here we go. It's Daniel Ferris and Norm Bryson. So the nitrous yads all come down the left-hand side right here. Norman Bryson, Georgia-based 68 Camaro. So we need second chance X275 to the lanes, please. Second chance X275 to the lanes, and we also need the Fantastic Four X275. So Ferris, I think what's a little redemption, man? Can he go to the final round and get it?
Yeah, and he's going to have a very hardcore opponent there, as we saw that 0-10 reaction time out of Rivenbark. If he gets there, Norm Bryson, the guy that we probably spent the least amount of time talking about in these final four cars, but has earned his way here. Quick purge of the nitrous, one of the best runs he has ever had in Radial Versus the World competition. The car that really started to show signs of life at Lights Out 10 has become a monster here at the Sweet 16. Can Bryson do what no one else has done so far and stop Dan Ferris? Yes, oh man, they're both going to spin the tires. Norman Bryson's going to the final round. Wow, whoa, that is the upset of the century. 5:01.9 at 183, and Dan Ferris whiffed the tires off the starting line, and Norm Bryson, pedaling for his life, Lee, got to the finish line first.
Norman Bryson, I would have to say, is the underdog story of the year just because he went up against Ferris, beat him the whole time before that race. They were struggling with the car, trying to make it work, trying to make a good pass. They made it into the qualifying field barely, made it through semifinals. Now they're into the finals with Rivenbark, who is a deadly force in that car. And now we get to see exactly which car is going to come out on top and win the entire event with a huge purse. So let's take a look at the run.
This is a $101,000 reaction time, a $101,000 tune-up, a $101,000 moment for Norman Bryson or Kevin Rivenbark. My mind says the pressure is on Rivenbark. Why? Because he had a car that set the world record. He was the first guy to the 350s. He is the car that the entire world of drag racing thought would show up here and dominate this drag race. Donald Long wanted nothing more than a radial nitrous car to prove people wrong of its capability to compete with the other power adders. It was Marcus Burt that most definitely proved that point with the performance, but it's Norman Bryson who has waded his way through all the rounds of competition to make it to the final. This is an unexpected man in the right lane.
Norm Bryson, Georgia here, the MMA trader by trade. Let's see, Albert Power underneath the hood, man. Can he pull off the impossible? Everybody said there's no way a nitrous car can win. He's number 13 qualifier. He'll be going against Rivenbark, the Law Motorsports Pro Line. Pro Charger, the company, is all behind that vehicle. That's a lot of pressure on.
Kevin Rivenbark has a career in drag racing that spans decades, but this is the biggest, most important hit he has ever made in his life. Norman Bryson has less time in the sport, but again, the biggest, most important single run of his life. Here we go!
So he strikes the tires. Look at that. Kevin Rivenbark, top end charge, about 363 at 204 miles an hour. Takes home $101,000.
That was a great race to watch. I was so excited. I didn't know who was going to win because of all the upsets, pass, but Rivenbark came out on top with the win with a final run of 363, showing them that car is basically a bracket car in Radial Versus the World trim, knocking down 360s passes and even a 350 pass earlier in the event. He took home the $101,000 and he was in the winner's circle for Radial Versus the World, so congratulations to those guys. A great event, well done. Now that we've covered the race, all the top qualifiers, in the spirit of the show, let's rewind and talk about all of the action from this episode. Number one, there was so many records set during this race, okay? Rivenbark, obviously, he was the first Radial Versus the World car to break into the 350s, and he is the only blower car in Radial Versus the World to go into the 350s still. Now, Ferris reset the record shortly thereafter with a 357, which is hugely impressive by itself, and a huge mile per hour of 214. In X275, Goss set the X275 record at 4.237, but it was later taken by Bruters with a 4.235 in the final. Insanely cool to watch, very exciting, and on top of all that, it was a brand new Pro-Charged combination. They went from a turbocharger setup to a Pro-Charger setup, and also set the record in the class. Very, very, very cool. I was excited the whole race. I'm still excited talking about it right now. And the fact that the entire X275 field had less than a 2/10 spread in the top 16 qualifiers. That's so tight. Less than a 1/10.5 between all 16 cars. Very cool. All of them were in the low 420s and mid 430s. It was a huge stage. It's a great race. They really prepped that track right. The density altitude is always on point, and it's always fun to watch all of Duck's races, whether it's Sweet 16, whether it's Lights Out, whether it's No Mercy. It's where all the records are set, all the fastest cars debut, break the records, and I just wanted to highlight Sweet 16 2.0 for you guys, go over the biggest and fastest runs. Again, thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to stay tuned. We're going to be dropping new episodes every week. We're going to have new races that we focus on, different subjects, and we're going to bring you all the action next time on Rewind.